I never liked feeling in a job that like I don't have full control, like that I just am doing something because I'm told to do this.
Anna Simonowska, MBA graduate from London Business School.
And I always question things, which is not a good thing sometimes.
She's the founder and CEO of Fighter Shots.
Supported you.
The research you've done with the news.
The first 100% natural preservative-free immunity booster. It became Amazon's 7th biggest seller in herbal supplements.
We were in 300 stores. We just got signed into 200 more.
Anna shares how her journey and curiosity made this all possible.
The only thing they regret is that they never took the risk to leave the company and do something else. And that was like very powerful for me. I just felt like it was enough.
Do you think that you have evolved as either a leader or as a person?
This is also something I did not expect. When you were like just obsessing about something and you were just so stressed and you were thinking like, oh my God, like how am I going to solve it?
I also saw that you did a 3 days Vipassana meditation.
I did, yes, 2 years ago now, yeah.
Was there anything that was highly unexpected?
I just like could not imagine what would happen and how I would feel. And the surprise was
Anna, welcome. You know, going back at even just looking at your professional history, you know, one thing I've noticed is you've covered a lot of ground already. You know, you've spent some time in Ecuador, Australia, and a number of places in Western Europe as well, I believe, Germany, France, and of course, London now, which is very close to my heart. Looking back, you know, what contributed to you doing this? Do you see anything in your parents' or grandparents' story that may have led to you taking this kind of route?
It's a good question. My sister literally very recently asked me, where do I have the traveler's gene from? Because indeed in my family we don't have like a strong immigration history. A lot of Polish people did emigrate, so there is obviously a lot of Polish people in US, in South America, I believe, like Brazil and Argentina were like, you know, big emigration routes for Poland over centuries. And I don't have anyone like that in my family, but I don't think you have to be inspired by like your family member. I do believe every person is different, and it's, I guess, like it's the personality, you know, that kind of makes you curious. And indeed, when I was like in high school and like middle school, I was always thinking, you know, I was always curious. I was always kind of curious about like, you know, other cultures and other languages. I really wanted to like learn as many languages as I could. After like 3 or 4, I realized, you know, obviously there was always like a diminishing return. So then I stopped. But yeah, I did have that curiosity, definitely. And I don't think it was coming from just any particular person. It was just like in myself, I guess.
You mentioned the migration history of Poland, which you touched on. It's something that fascinated me because, you know, obviously there was communism ruling. And then I think it was around the end of the 80s where that kind of was overruled, right? And I think there was, you know, this initial feeling of, okay, you know, freedom has been given to the people. They're obviously very hardworking, to say the least. But from what I've heard, and obviously you can tell me different, it didn't seem to go exactly to plan, where, you know, some of the protectionist measures that existed under the ruling were taken away. So there was a lot of unemployment created, and people didn't thrive how they initially thought they would.
I mean, first of all, I would say that like the emigration from Poland did not, you know, just start during communism. Poland has like a very long history, and, you know, after war, during the wars, before the First World War, actually Poland did not exist for 123 years on the maps because it was divided. And over like all of these times, you know, a lot of people experienced hardship. So they, you know, were emigrating like over, like, as I said, centuries. So it wasn't necessarily just like, you know, the last, I don't know, like 30 years or, you know, whatever long the communism lasted.
And so your parents and grandparents all from
Poland, yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I even did like the 23andMe test, and I'm 99.8%
Wow.
Polish. So yes.
And so then looking at your upbringing, this curiosity, do you believe that's something that people are born with, or do you think it's, you know, the nature versus nurture? Do you think something that happens, whether it's in your, you know, speaking from personal experience, your home environment or your school environment, that contributed to you having this?
The makeup, like, you know, what we are made of, because I had like a very obviously typical, I would say, education. I never went like to like private school, never had like, you know, individual, you know, like just classes. It was always like, you know, in big classes of like 20 to 30 kids. So I don't think we were taught anything like specifically that kind of made us think, oh, like, you know, you should be like this open and do this or do that. So I think I don't kind of, or maybe sometimes it's the opposite. Like, you know, kids like to do the opposite. Like if they are being like, you know, given things, right? Like maybe, you know, if I was traveling a lot, like with my parents when I was like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe I would be tired of it. But just because I didn't, then kind of you want to do things like you kind of are not given opportunity to. So, that also might be like, you know, a reason. But again, I do think like some people are just like, some people are more extroverted than others. And, you know, and it's just like, we are all like, have different interests, right? Like some people might be like more into sports maybe, or like, you know, more into, I don't know, literature. And that's kind of how they like spending time. And for me, it was always like, you know, I want to get to know other people. I want to kind of, you know, just travel and see the world, and kind of not only going on holidays but actually, you know, working in those countries and studying. And yeah, most of those countries you mentioned, I was actually either working on or studying.
Would you say that you are a natural extrovert?
I think I used to be much more. This is also a very interesting question, because I always thought like once you know you are something, then you stay that person. It has changed. I was definitely much more extroverted in my 20s. And then I realized there was like a time where I decided I actually prefer like to be like more on my own. So I become right now, I guess, more introverted than I used to be.
Yeah. In terms of, I think, where you decide to prioritize certain things that I guess bring purpose. And you know, some of the things that you hear about CEOs is that it's very lonely at the top, right? As
well, if I was maybe very much at the top, you know, that would be different. I also kind of don't see myself like, you know, obviously like running, you know, a small startup where we are just right now 4 people. You know, I wouldn't say it's that lonely. And also if, you know, I'm doing something that is like not rocket science, you know, running a food business is not something that kind of I feel lonely at, because there's so many similar, you know, startups, similar founders at very similar stage, you know, and at obviously like advanced, you know, so that we're at my stage. So there's always someone I can talk about. And I literally don't remember a moment that I had like a problem and no one had it before, right? Because as I say, you know, it's a very like, you know, standard business, I would say. You can always obviously do things slightly differently. But if someone told me they feel lonely, I would be like, then you're not using your network, maybe your connections, you know, all of the opportunities we have, you know, to connect with people, because there is enough people in this world that can help like small businesses.
The network thing, I think, is really important. And, you know, I look forward to diving into that.
Yeah.
But so growing up, your friends, would you say that they had a similar mindset to you, especially with this curiosity to see the world?
Yeah, of course, some do. And that's kind of how they become friends, because you share these things. So yes, I guess, again, I also don't think, you know, I'm that unique, that it was only me kind of, you know, especially if when you come to London, you meet so many people that also are so well traveled, you know, that are having like a very international background, that I don't think any more special. And also, I went here to London Business School that is super international. 90% of the cohort is like from outside the UK. And it's just crazy how international people are. So as I say, like it's not that difficult to meet like-minded people.
Yeah. Where was your first stop? after you left? When was the first time you left Poland?
Poland. So for the longest was an exchange. So when I was like 16 to 17, I went on an exchange to Germany. That was like a high school exchange for 1 year.
What was the biggest unexpected takeaway you took from that experience?
Unexpected was actually that people are very similar.
Yeah.
Yes, that kind of, you're always curious, like, how people in other countries are and what their life looks like. And then you learn actually people do have the same, obviously, issues, problems. They also have to go to school, they have to go to work. They have like dramas, right? That was kind of interesting to see that we are obviously probably, more similar. But then again, it was just Poland versus Germany, which is still kind of very similar. I'm not saying that like, I know everyone, like every culture, and I would not say that maybe like, people in Asia, are because I haven't, like, let's say I didn't go to high school in Asia, right, or in Africa, so I can't, compare like everyone, but specifically Poland and Germany at that time, it seemed like very easy. I went there to high school and I literally did not feel like different, which was like a nice surprise, basically. Do
you think that's for everyone, this experience? Would you?
No, I guess everyone is different. So so this exchange was kind of organized by an organization, and I think we were like 20 something people that went. And the nice thing is obviously that kind of, every few weeks you kind of meet up with others who are on this exchange to kind of talk about like, how you're doing. And there will be always people who kind of, are thriving, are learning the language like, really quickly, are like settling well, in their host families. And there are always people, like literally there was, I think, 1 or 2 people who left early because they just hated it, they were missing their families and they just did not enjoy it. So it's kind of, it varies.
You mentioned the London Business School.
Yeah.
Was that your next stop? Or was that the next place that you went once you'd left Poland, or was there?
No. So I was 16, 17 when I did this exchange, and I came to LBS when I was like 29, 30.
Okay.
So many years later, yeah.
Do you think the impact of how that exchange went was a driving factor of whether you would have then left again?
Yes, because, I found it like relatively easy to kind of, learn the language. Again, at 16, you are kind of pretty young, so you can learn the language pretty quickly still. At like many years later, when I was trying to learn more languages, I realized it is more difficult. So kids do learn much quicker. So because, I was able to kind of, write all the exams in German, and because, I found it like super like easy and straightforward, I think it was much easier for me to kind of decide, all right, like, now I, let's say, want to like work in Germany. Now I want to go like to university somewhere. So I think, yes, it gives you this idea that, you can do these things and that like, borders don't exist anymore. At that time when I went, Poland was not in the EU yet. So like we needed, I needed to get like a visa. It was quite a long process because I'm coming from like a small city outside of Krakow. Like the embassy was like in another city. You had to like, go there, like your parents, because I was not like 18 yet. My parents had to go there to kind of get the visa. It was like pretty tedious process. But once you go through it, you then realize that, it's all kind of, just formalities, but like you can go through it, right? So yeah, it gave me this like, you can do attitude.
Did you have any shocks between what life was like in Poland versus moving abroad to another place?
No, I think also Polish people, because of like, we are taught at school, again, it's maybe turning too much like, about Poland, but I think we have this chip on the shoulder that like, because we were going through so many hardships, as I said, a lot of people have this like complex, I think, of other countries, and I think that's not necessary because Poland is doing so well. Like I think, Poland is a great country, and we should not feel that like we are any worse because people are really well educated. A lot of things, of course, a lot of things also don't work, but like there is no country where everything works, right? And being educated in Poland, I have to say education is amazing. Like schools are really good. I feel like, I had such a good like, just education, and it's all free, right? So for that, I think, Poland is doing really great. It's a well-organized country.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because, there's, speaking again from the London point of view, and I guess there are some similar thoughts felt with other countries, that, like you said, there's a lot of Polish emigration, and they do a lot of the sort of heavy lifting jobs, and they often get categorized by this.
Yeah.
But like you say, with the education side, there's a lot of very high skilled professional labor that also comes out of there that sometimes probably gets sidelined. Do you find that amongst the people that you still know from back home or with your family, that this kind of, they hold a kind of gripe to this stereotyping?
I think, again, less and less. So yes, when Poland entered the EU, there was a lot of movement to the UK, because there was still, I think, a lot of pay gap, but it's closing right now. And also, it depends, of course, on a job, but not all the jobs are that well paid in the UK, I think, anymore, from our perspective. So I think it's less and less people coming just, to work here. For that reason, I think even if there were any, as you say, perceptions about Polish workers, I think they are less. And from our perspective, somehow in Poland, we also thought we are being seen, like that outside of our country. But then there is so many other nations, right? There is so many Asian nations where there is also a lot of people from there. So I don't feel necessarily that people are picking on you anymore. Oh, you came here to kind of steal our, construction work jobs or restaurant jobs. No, I don't see that anymore.
And so you finished your education in Poland?
Well, yes, I did high school and just this 1 year in Germany, but then I got my A levels in Poland, and then I did also my very first master's degree in Poland. Yes.
And so what spurred that first move post education?
So during university as well, I did a few exchanges. So that was the Ecuador one you mentioned, and Australia. No, Australia was later, but Ecuador was one of my internships. I also did one in Madrid and in Germany then again, because I already spoke the language, so it was easy. And afterwards, I was working in Poland, and this opportunity came to do another master's in Iceland in energy. And I was just curious also by this new topic. So renewable energy was becoming a big thing. And it was 2010, I think, 2009, because 2010 I already went to Iceland, January. So 2009. And I was working in Madrid for this energy consultancy, and we were working on very interesting projects. And because I had zero background, but I've learned a few things, and I thought I actually would like to kind of have a proper degree in this. So I went to Iceland for a year, and that was, my other big trip. And I would love to kind of, work in this industry. But, when you're this young, you kind of just take any job opportunity without kind of thinking about long-term, how it might impact your life. So when I got a job at Airbus, I felt oh yeah, fine, sounds good. It's a great product, a big company. And so I took that. So unfortunately, I never went back to working in renewable energy.
With any of these opportunities, did you know they were sort of temporary stints where, it was a learning curve for you, or were any of them, did you feel okay, this could be a, more of a permanent move?
Yeah, no, because at that time it's so difficult really kind of to plan for your career. So I was not able to tell yet, this is something I want to learn. I want to stay in for life. And maybe because each time I think you're in a new job, you just don't feel confident enough to say, this is it, right? I'm so good at this, I'm going to stay in this job for 50 years. So no, each time, I was doing something, I was just trying to be open-minded. And if something better came across, then I was always this person who would be able to assess. And I was never, I think, afraid of change. So I have to say that too, because I know that a lot of people who get their jobs are no, I have to stay here. I want to be the best, I can in what I'm doing. Whereas I was always thinking of oh, but what about these other jobs? What are these other people doing, right? I'm curious, and maybe I'll be better at it. Because also I never liked feeling in a job that I don't have full control. like that I just am doing something because I'm told to do this. And I always question things, which is not a good thing sometimes, because people get annoyed when you question them all the time. But I did, and that also was like maybe a feeling where I felt like until I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing here, I'd rather like explore my options.
And you talk about that, the fear that some people have of change, which is
Yeah.
which is fascinating, because I had a previous guest called Lucas Grobot. He's from the US, and then he moved to the Middle East. And one thing that he reflected back on was that while he, was grateful of the ability to embrace change and face that risk, one downside he did say is that you almost become very used to living in this temporary social bubble where it becomes sometimes difficult to make those long-term friendships, not because you're not capable or not because you don't want to. It's because at the back of your mind, something probably tells you that I'm not going to be here for that long. Did you ever find that you maybe not exactly distanced, but there was a bit of a barrier?
Yes, I had that feeling for a little bit of time. Sometime, especially when I was in France, because at Airbus, Airbus is a typical like long-term job. A lot of people stay there for like 30, 40 years for their whole career. And it's nothing wrong with it. It just attracts, those people that stay. I think it matches their personality. They just like, just having like organized life, just buying a big house, having like kids and family there. And that's kind of, where they find happiness, which is great. I wish, I like could do that too. So when I left there, I lost most of my connection to like people there. And then you just realize it's nothing wrong with this. It's just you obviously are different people. And so I don't miss that, because if I stayed and I were still friends with these people, that would mean that maybe, you are not real friends anyways, right? Because you are different people. Whereas here in London, it was a bit easier to find, as I always say, like-minded people who just understand that like sometimes, people move. And so it doesn't mean that like they forget you just because you left somewhere. Like now I moved to Lisbon, for example, but each time I'm in London, you just know who like accepts the fact that you just decided to move. It doesn't mean that it has to end friendship. So I'm not sad about that either, about that aspect, because like those people who you want, to be in touch with, you'll be in touch with no matter where you are.
And let's talk about London. So you came here to do your MBA.
Yes.
Was that when did you make that decision? Was that always part of the plan?
It wasn't. I didn't even know like much about like MBA. And to be honest, I never wanted to study business, because my very first degree was engineering. The second one was renewable energy, which also had like, a lot of like STEM subjects. And I always felt like this is something, I kind of want to do. And I always felt like, business is just whatever. You don't need a degree in business. You can just, it's common sense. Maybe it came a little bit from the background, like how it is being seen in Poland. So yes, every country has some stereotypes. And in Poland, because again of its whole story, like it is valued when someone has like a proper and what is proper degree, it's also like questionable, but people see like engineering jobs, like again, as everywhere, probably doctors, right? These people have like proper jobs. So business is being seen as like, economics and stuff. It's just the universities that were offering these degrees were just not the best universities in Poland. Maybe let's put it that way. Although there is just one in Warsaw, and yes, those people study business and it's a good school. But in Krakow, at least, I think other universities were better, like technical universities, and then Jagiellonia University, where like, people want to study law or medicine, right? So just coming maybe from that background, I never wanted, to do business. And where it came from was that when I was at Airbus, I was 5 years I was there. I just felt like it was enough. I've seen, a lot in this company. It's an amazing company. Sometimes I do think like, if I ever was to come back, what would I do there? But, in a company with over 100,000 people, it's very difficult to progress if you don't do things differently. And it's very difficult to do things differently. And I also like within my team, a lot of people said, in order to progress, you have to leave the company and then you have to come back with like a lot of experience, different experience, because if you stay, you have the same experience as everyone else, right? So like you won't be different. And a lot of people also like in their 50s and 60s who are close to retirement told me the only thing they regret is that they never took the risk to leave the company and do something else. And that was like very powerful for me. And it's probably true for every big company. Staying here is like no option. And I also, at some point, you also like learn less and less. And yes, learning on a job is great, but you also want to kind of learn processes, kind of, you know, learn how things work like on a different scale, not just Airbus. And because, you know, after like 5 years of doing, basically it was like project management, like we're delivering aircraft and you have to kind of make sure that all the steps are being covered. It's very much project management. After doing that, like I didn't feel like I could do any other job that like would be at a, like, you know, not entry level. So the only option literally I could think of was MBA. And also because a few other people I knew were also like pursuing MBAs, literally 4, 5, 6 I could name. And they were all like, like I felt like their complaints about the company were very similar. So they all said like, yeah, they feel stuck, you know, they want to like just like have more power and like just, you know, take more decisions. And obviously you can't because you have so many like managers above you. And unless like you come with like a strong degree, it would be difficult. So these people, I think, also made me realize, okay, that's my only way out.
And so there's one thing hearing about making change and then thinking about making the change, but the actual action to take it is, you know, almost that big leap that a lot of people don't ever get to that stage. And, you know, some of it comes down to personal circumstance and commitment. It's not as easy to say for them to make a move. But
of course,
there's still there's still a mental hurdle that you overcome, which is, you know, to take that risk. And do you see any, you know, influence in your upbringing or from your parents where, you know, did they support your decision to take risk or follow?
No, that's true. Like if you have maybe, you know, someone in your family who kind of pressurize you to kind of, I don't know, save a certain amount of money and buy a house and have a family, then yes, it would be difficult to have like an expensive degree on top. But I was lucky maybe, or I guess that's how every family should be, that like they just leave you to do, right? Like I think also if I had kids, I would be like, just do whatever makes you happy. So I also was fortunate enough to have just parents who would say, of course, like, you know, like why would we tell you what to do, right? Like you, it's your life, so just do whatever. And so I never felt like I need to explain myself doing these things.
And so it was during the MBA where you came up with the idea of fighter shots?
No, during MBA I had a few other ideas. I always had kind of very naive, stupid ideas. So I was like thinking and brainstorming and like always like telling other people about it. I remember like, you know, scheduling some meetings with some people at MBA who like showed like maybe interest in something. I was like, I have the same idea, like let's discuss, right? And then you would like talk about it and then you realize you just don't have really a plan how to start things. Yes, not all the time. But the fighter shots idea came just a few months after I graduated, when I was thinking it would be good to kind of have like a side business because my salary at that time was not very impressive. And I was a bit upset, like working long hours and have like an average salary in London is a little bit, you know, just painful, right? Because I couldn't like afford, let's say, like renting a flat on my own, or like, you know, I just barely paid, you know, my MBA fees. So I thought, you know, just like I was actively thinking like I want to have a side business, and it started as a side business idea. It's very naive. I was thinking it can be a side business, but once I started, I realized you have to put like, even though it seems like a simple business, you have to put like all efforts, otherwise it will not work out. Because a lot of people who have side businesses, they often go nowhere or are not as profitable. And I realized that like, what's the point, you know, if you believe in it, then why don't you put like all of your time? And it maybe does take a little bit of like risk as well, because obviously it might not work out. But at this stage, I have to say if I did not work on it full time, we would not be where we are.
From looking into your story,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that really stood out was the benefit that the London MBA served for helping with fighter shots. And it always reminds me of this book called The Unfair Advantage, if you've heard of it, by...
Yes, but you have to create that, right? Like we all have some sort of like unfair advantages because we met someone who helped us, right? Or we met this investor, or we met this customer who wants to buy our product. I wouldn't say them, without them, it wouldn't be a success. They helped. But I wouldn't say it's unfair.
No, so it's good that you brought that view up, because what the book is really good at touching on is, not the advantage of having an MBA by your name, but what that education environment presents to you. So it talks about a few different things under what's called the Miles framework. But one of the things it covers is, under education, there's actually 3 things that it empowers you with. One is the knowledge, of course, and then there's network and there's signaling. So if I'm right, you met your co-founder at the MBA, but also with what it means by signaling is it puts you in an environment where your knowledge, your expertise, your creativity, the innate talents within you have that space to be exposed to the right type of people. And I think, aside from what the MBA teaches you, the fact that you took that decision to do one allowed you to be exposed to what's called your social network, so the people, but also taking advantage of your cultural network, which is your own creativity, your tastes, your hobbies, and meeting the right people that allowed you to kickstart this business and help it flourish.
Well, I won't disagree with that, of course, yes, but I mean, that's why I went there, right? That's why I decided to do it, because I was hoping that they will give me this space of thinking about ideas, having a framework to it. And that's what I was always missing, because I'm a person that is not very organized. I felt I need a framework. I was doing things randomly, but I felt like it's not the way. I kind of want to know that I have a process to it. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's you don't have actually to do MBA, the best schools. You don't have to do maybe LBS or Harvard to actually come to the same conclusions, because most of the business schools, I think they have the exact same curriculum. So, if the only thing maybe that is that also gives you this advantage is that you obviously maybe feel a little bit more confident that it came from the best school, so they can't be wrong. To be honest, they can as well be wrong. It's not all of the professors are knowing it all, right? There's also professors with maybe new professors with maybe less experience. All I'm saying is that yes, if you believe this is what MBA is giving you, then just do MBA, or just download a curriculum. So many online MBAs too. And then, you can apply that framework if you believe, it gives you this, advantages.
From your time there, you took this idea, and I believe it was just from a personal experience, right, where you tried a ginger drink. And
yeah, basically. So interestingly, there is a course at MBA called TJO. I think it stands for developing entrepreneurial opportunities. And it literally teaches you that you don't have to come up with a completely new idea. There's a framework to starting a business. You can either buy someone else's business, or you can copy someone else's business from a different country. And it's basically what I did. I saw similar products somewhere else, and I was thinking, I could probably make the same product in the UK. And I did research. I saw that margins are good. I was buying the product myself, and I think it's very important to start with that, because that gives you confidence whenever you obviously at the beginning, you have to put a lot of money into manufacturing without really having any customers, right? So you take this risk of starting something, but then I had to remind all the time myself, well, I am the customer, right? So there must be more people like me. So that, gives you definitely confidence. And if you stick to that thought, then it's a little bit less scary.
You found your co-founder, was it Sukriti and Raza, who
I love
supported you.
the research you've
Yeah.
done with the names. Yes, that were Sister Kriti was my colleague at MBA, and Raza was her husband. And yes, they liked the idea. When I told them, we got connected actually because I said I had an idea to another friend, and she said, "Oh, I think Sister Kriti had a very similar idea. Why don't you guys connect?" So it's not typical thing where you just meet someone who you think might be on the same page. And yeah, we worked for a few months together. They helped with the initial research, kind of framing, the steps. It didn't work out eventually, just because the start was a bit slow. So again, everyone has their own idea in their head, maybe how soon you should see results. And especially seeing lots of headlines where some companies get huge valuations within a few weeks, right? And when you don't, you feel like, oh, it's a failure. And I felt like maybe for them, again, they had different schedule. They kind of wanted to see results much sooner. And after a few months, we still didn't have a manufacturer, and the pricing we were getting did not look promising. So they said look, we want to start a family, and we just don't see how we can pay 3 salaries.
Did you ever have any moments where you thought you were going to stop?
No, I was thinking, what else could I be doing? And I never found a better alternative. So not it's never I wanted to say, oh, I hate it, because that was never the case. I actually always liked what I'm doing, because we were lucky that as soon as we started, we were getting so many loyal customers that over the years have been ordering with us. So it was never that orders stopped. If anything, I was thinking, if there was if I had another idea, what would I do with fighter shots? Because I definitely never wanted to stop it. Sometimes I thought maybe I can kind of hire someone and run it as a side business. But even then, I think, it would unfortunately probably, slow its progress and, its growth. And also I realized at a certain stage when, things are working and you're just growing, we're growing the team, we are entering new markets, we are thinking of new products. When you're at this stage, it's actually fascinating, and I'm happy we got to this moment where we have such an amazing relationship with our suppliers. They are giving us great working terms, and I would never kind of want to stop this, because with any new business, you would need to kind of work for this reputation from scratch, and it takes years until your suppliers give you credit, until you trust people, until you kind of, can do also stupid things. For example, sometimes I have product that is wrongly labeled. And because again, I'm in this business for so long, I have customers, wholesalers who I know they would accept it. So I just give them a small, not even discount, to one wholesaler, I said, I'll give you just 3 months of payment term, do you want to accept this? And he said, sure. So kind of these small things, if I was just starting and you have this problem, that would be huge, because I'll be what do I do with it, right? Taking it all back and relabeling would be thousands of pounds, such a loss. Whereas as you are longer in the business and you have these just understand how things work, I literally just send a WhatsApp, and it's solved. So I kind of being at this stage where I can feel comfortable. So giving that away for a completely new job, I think wouldn't be worth it.
There's a quote that always stands out to me by Jeff Bezos. He said it himself, which was that building a startup is often jumping off a cliff and then figuring out how to build the parachute on the way down.
Yeah.
Did you feel that kind of?
Yeah, all the time. But of course, because when you do things for the first time, you just don't know. But after some time, after you've done this several times, and as I say, in the end, it is quite repetitive, right? But then if the problem is coming, you've been so long in this business that you have just more options. You, as I say, you can negotiate better terms, you can, and they would after right now, let's say, luckily, we were so lucky we never had this issue with payments that we were never short of, we were very close, to kind of, running out of money. But we never actually had a problem where we couldn't pay an invoice, right? But I'm also right now more confident that at this stage, we are that even if, I had this issue, I would solve it like much easier, because as I say, I could maybe, just like ask, for a better term. And I know that like at this stage, after working for so long, they would be more likely to accept that. So with time is like definitely a great factor in running a business. So it's an advantage. I thought it's a disadvantage. I thought like the beginning, within like few months, if you don't show like huge sales and all these successes, then it's a failure. But that's not true. Like I think some businesses should realize that actually being on the market for, let's say, several years, 4, 5, 6 years, is also an achievement, that like you actually survive, because a lot of businesses don't survive right past the first, second, third year. So if you're this long, I think it should be also celebrated.
No, for sure. And I think the number's around 90% of startups fail, which just sets the precedent. But one thing that I really loved about how you've set yourselves up, there's the example of Huda Katan, who made Huda Beauty, right? And there's a couple of things that really contributed to her success. And obviously her trajectory has been amazing, but she had a passion for makeup. So she went into makeup and she located herself in the center of Hollywood, basically in Los Angeles, because that's where there's such a high market base for people who really care about skincare, beauty, and also, you're right, by the celebrities.
Yeah.
The next thing she did was she moved to the Middle East, where there's people with her skin complexion. So what that market serves, obviously there's economically it's a very good market, but also given her own skin complexion, it gave her target audience something to relate to, where she understands the skin complexion of the target audience, and they can say that, okay, this person relates to me. They've created a skin products that they understand the challenges I'm going through. With what really stood out about your blog section is it's not just this is a ginger shot and this is why it's healthy for you. I think people will understand why they're coming to use Fighter Shots for the USP, which is normally based around, it could be health, it could be whatever they see as the USP. But your blog also dives into things about why it's good for your skin, or why it relieves illnesses, or why, sore throats. And then, even if people who really care about buying things that believe in sustainability and a carbon zero lifestyle. So I think the fact that you touch on areas where you're really connecting with your audience based on what you believe yourself, because you're putting it out through your own blog. I think that's it's a huge advantage, that it serves more than just the one purpose that it's made for.
Yeah, we're trying to obviously be very authentic. So we are not hiring any agency to kind of do this communication for us. It's all actually being written by our employees, all of the blogs. It's, I'm very glad like you obviously read this section. There are so many businesses out there with like, blogs, and not necessarily, all the customers would be doing the research. So we are glad that like some people do look into this. I think, yes, that's, one of the advantages, of a business when you are trying to be honest. And obviously you are like selling a product that like you like yourself, and you just don't do it purely because you just want to make money, or like, you just do it like as a side thing, and you just don't have the time to actually put into this. We do, a lot of research. Actually, we talk about, I always encourage my team also like to tell me because again, things are changing every day. And, I also want to stay relevant as a company. So I always ask them like, what are like the ingredients you just discovered? Like, what are the vitamins you're taking? What are the supplements? What is like your favorite, like, flavor, like this summer, right? And so we're trying to implement these things. We also listen to our customers all the time. They have also like lots of different, ideas. And that's kind of what is, makes you also believe, right? Like when actually someone told you like, this is what I want, then I think it gives you like this vision to like, invest in that. And because, every product is a lot of investment in the end. Like, you have to obviously, prepare the label, like you have to, like inform of your customers, put it like on all of the websites you're selling. It's a lot of like investment, because you obviously hire someone to do these things for you, and then it might not work. So, you can't like, you have to reduce failures. But I don't know. I just feel it's important that like you're selling what you really stand for and you actually know the product and you're responsible for it. Because in the end, you know, I think the worst thing I would feel it would be when obviously someone calls you and says like they were not happy, like it was terrible, it was something wrong with it, right? You kind of don't want to sell something you're kind of ashamed of, right? You want to just do a good product. So yeah, we definitely try to sell things we use ourselves.
And I think it's something that you said yourself, that you know that it's more expensive to, you know, make it out of glass, but it's something that you stand by because you want to keep it sustainable.
Yes.
Which I think is really powerful.
Yes, because I do believe, you know, there is enough people who also like worry about quality, or it's important. And as I say, you can always optimize for volumes, right? And that would be probably plastic, because then we also could price it a bit cheaper. And because it would be cheaper, we could manufacture more. But yeah, myself, I pay attention if I can buy a product in. It's not always possible, because sometimes like you get into a store and like everything, like water especially, sometimes it's just in plastic. Well, of course I'll drink it if it's the only option. But if I have the option, yes, I like to have it. And that's why I also kind of want to give the option to customers.
Before we move on to what's next for you and for Fighter Shots, I also saw that you did a 3 days Vipassana meditation.
I did, yes, 2 years ago now, yeah.
Talk me through of what you remember from that. There's, you know, a couple of things that I'd really like to find out about what your experience was. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that was highly unexpected that you gained from that you really didn't think would emerge?
Definitely. One thing that was unexpected was that I was actually capable of doing it without like being really in pain, right? Because 3 days, someone might think like it's really long and it's boring. And I was surprised how quickly the time passed. Sometimes I felt before very impatient. Sometimes like you have to wait like 15 minutes, like you miss a bus and the next one is in 15 minutes. It feels like eternity. And sometimes I'm like, you know, so upset about 15 minutes, let's say, that I thought I cannot imagine like meditating for 10 hours. I think it was 10 to 11 hours a day. I just like could not imagine what would happen and how I would feel. And the surprise was that actually the time passed by much quicker, which is fascinating. Like how, time is a weird concept, because sometimes it feels like eternity and sometimes it passes by very quickly.
Has there ever been a time when you've been able to stand back and reflect on, you know, your life journey and how everything is connected? And, you know, what are the key influences or impacts or maybe turning points that have brought you to where you are?
Yes. Of course, we do keep thinking, right? Like when is the moment is probably when I actually drive, I realized. So maybe also like driving, and the drive here was like over 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it also like went by quickly. I do obviously reflect, maybe not like about the whole life, but like the past months or like my past decisions. Yeah, you kind of think of it like, you know, was it a good idea? Or like sometimes you kind of remember moments where you were upset, and I think the best feeling like that I discovered recently is when something was like really absorbing you, and today it's not a problem anymore. When you were like just obsessing about something and you were just so stressed and you were thinking like, oh my god, like how am I going to solve it? And today it's just like you feel like, why did I even stress about this? Like that was not worth it. So yeah, I have sometimes moments like that. So yeah, I do think of things, and it's a very comforting feeling when you can think of like it's not a problem anymore.
And what do you think, or do you think there's anything from, you know, that meditation experience that you can see you taking forward and benefiting either your business or where you're going next?
Unfortunately, I did not come back to meditating anymore. So that's also like a little bit of a shame, that I was hoping that kind of once, you know, I thought like I will learn this, like I will learn meditation, and from then on like I would apply it. It doesn't work quite like that. I would still probably need to have that scheduled, because when you go there, you just don't like meditate on your own. It's guided meditation. So you obviously have these sessions scheduled, and like, again, you have like all of the support there, right? Because someone has taken away your phone. So like you don't even have this option of like, you know, reaching out. Someone prepares the meals for you, like, you know, the teas in between. So like it's easy. And now that like I'm back, you know, in the real world, I think it would need to take like a conscious effort to, you know, book a time in a calendar, take away the phone to another room and prepare that. And so I'm not doing it. So I wouldn't say, so yeah, that's maybe kind of a surprise also to myself, is that afterwards I thought this meditation would be coming naturally, and it's not. You still have to kind of, yeah, make the effort. So I'm not doing it.
Do you think there's any change in your character though?
Also not, no. It's, I wouldn't say it's like a life-changing event. The only thing I want to believe, you know, it gives you is just gives you perspective. That like, you know, when I get impatient, I kind of feel like, you know, why am I like impatient? I know I don't have to be like that because I know how to chill sometimes. I proved that. So that's kind of maybe the only thing that kind of I'm reminded about. But other than that, I wouldn't say it's life-changing.
So what's next for Fighter Shots?
So many opportunities. And so we definitely want to grow it. We just see like so many growth opportunities. So we are just right now, we just hired a new person who will be helping us in the Middle East. So Middle East is a huge market. My co-founder, who is based in Dubai, started a few years ago, and from then on it's just like picking up, and we get like more and more interest. We also have learned, again with the time, like, you know, it comes that you have, obviously you learn how things work. So right now we are registering more products, we are going into like more markets, so we can easily like triple or quadruple our sales there, and that's easily like without even investment. And then obviously like you can take more investment, you can, you know, just like do professional marketing. This is also like something that it's exciting we can do if we feel like, you know, now's the time, but it's not something that kind of we are forced to, otherwise like, you know, we're out of business. So we slowly kind of look into the UAE market, and kind of when the time is right, we will probably like, you know, grow it even faster. But for now, we were in 300 stores. We just got signed into 200 more.
Wow.
I think is huge, you know, for just until now we were just 3 people. Now we were before. And then there is, yeah, also in the UK, lots of opportunities. A lot of our customers also like their orders grow, so we try to accommodate that. Again, new products. We just launched hemp. Our next one in June will be pomegranate and vitamin D3, of which, again, I'm very, very proud, because it's a little bit of a different type of a product. If there is, you know, if the products will be fortified with vitamins. And we are thinking already, like, should we maybe go more into that? So we will then tap a completely new customer.
How do you think, or do you think that you have evolved as either a leader or as a person through the experiences you've gone through?
Definitely, I did. Yes, I this is also something I did not expect. That I'll be so much more confident in my decisions and talking to people as well. Because yeah, previously when you kind of work for someone, again, it was just maybe my attitude. Maybe it doesn't have to be like that, but I somehow struggled with like, you know, you just were in meetings and you just like say something and then you don't know like how is that being taken, like are you being taken seriously, or you doubt yourself, like how, like you say something, you think it's a good idea, but in the end you don't know because it's just, you know, an assumption. Whereas now I'm just so confident because I know how things work, right? Like, you know, we've manufactured over 1 million bottles at this stage. So I exactly know how things work. So I can make these informed decisions. And like, you know, if someone is telling me something, you know, I'm very confident when I'm saying like, no, it won't work, or like, this is how we have to like go forward. So, yes, it does give me this confidence and flexibility, definitely.
And this confidence that you present yourself also is quite empowering for the team. And I know that the team is still small, But it's like that famous saying, it's not the genius at the top that makes the people below great. It's the great people at the bottom that brings out the genius in the person above, right?
That's true as well. Yes. So the dynamic between like, you know, your team members is fascinating. Yes, it does give you also a lot of, I would not say confidence. I would say gives you a lot of
would you say safety to
safety, but also like this helps you like with your vision, because you know that like there is someone who will implement it and you can fall back on them, and you know that like you are not on your own. And so the dynamic is very important, I would say, with your employees. And it's so important. Everyone obviously says that, oh, it's important to have a great team, but it is.
No, it's great. I mean, are there any final comments that you know, anything that you really wanted to bring out that we haven't discussed already?
I know you did such a good research on literally everything that I don't think there would be anything else I would add.
No, that's amazing. Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, the tradition on this show is that the previous guest will leave 2 questions, which you haven't seen before. So
all right.
Once you're ready, I'll give you the questions.
Please do.
So the first one is, what book or movie, or it can be a TV show as well, have you read or seen that has had a significant impact on either your life or a worldview?
Yeah. There is one that I read a long time ago, and again, it's not like high literature. It was literally Ken Follett, which is like, you know, just a bestseller. But a lot of his books are set in medieval times. And we were at the beginning, we started like talking about, you know, how people's lives might differ or not between like countries geographically. And I love also like having this other dimension of time. And I know that like these stories are made up, but I want to believe that like, you know, people in medieval times also had the exact same problems and issues and dramas as we do. They have like, you know, the same, obviously, like, let's say family problems, love problems, money problems, job problems. And it kind of keeps you grounded. So again, he's written like a few books set in those times. And although like I read it a long time ago, I always kind of like thinking about it, that, you know, 500 years ago, like life wasn't that different. We don't have like, there is nothing like to stress about, because that's kind of how it is. We will not change anything. These problems will be always coming. There is like no point in worrying about something we have no influence on.
No, I love that. And the second question is, what is something about your culture or heritage that you wish more people knew or understood?
Maybe just that we are very open-minded, and, you know, a lot of people think that like people from Poland are very straightforward. So I know that like a lot of people are afraid of that and say, oh, like people are rude. And I would maybe say we are not rude. We're just taught that like we're very different. I would say on the opposite spectrum from Americans. Somewhere like between Americans and British people, just very, very honest. So I know a lot of people struggle with that. And yeah, you just have to know. It's just how we were taught. Just we have to speak the truth.
And I think you get to solve problems and issues, or even just express your opinion a lot quicker. But no, thank you so much. And you know, the thing I appreciated the most was just you giving your raw and honest thoughts and opinions on everything that you shared, whether it's, you know, things that we shared in common or something that I've learned completely new. So I'm very glad that we did this, and I really look forward to trying your new flavors.
Great.
And seeing how far Fighter Shots grows.
I'll let you know when they're ready.
I'll be waiting. Thanks so much.
Thank you.